Hello, I'm Antonio Mora. This is the newsandnews.com day in brief. Today's top stories in 4 minutes. It's Wednesday, January 2nd at about 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Happy New Year. And the new year politically began where it left off, in the middle of a government shutdown, now in its 12th day. President Trump met with the top leaders from both sides of the aisle on Capitol Hill in the White House Situation Room today in an attempt to negotiate a solution to the crisis, but no deal was reached. Neither side has much political motivation to compromise. $5 billion for the wall isn't much when compared to the massive federal budget, but the Democrats now control the House and their base is strongly against the wall, so there is no way they're going to give Trump a win. And the wall is Trump's signature issue, extremely important to his base, so he doesn't have much to win politically by backing down. Of course, none of that would matter if they cared more about the government, federal workers, and the American public than the desires of their base. Sadly, these days, governing responsibly is too much to ask of our politicians. Many Trump supporters wish they could put a muzzle on the president, especially on his Twitter feed, but Nancy Pelosi supporters may wish the once and future speaker would choose her words more carefully. A few weeks ago, she fueled conservative critics by saying Trump's insistence on a border wall was about his manhood. Today, she said she saw the wall as an immorality. Talk about feeding red meat to advocates for the wall, who will argue that illegal immigration is the immorality and that every nation has the sovereign right to control its borders. Pelosi should have limited her comments to how the wall is the least expensive and the least effective and most expensive way to control migration, in her opinion. As often happens with Trump, verbal diarrhea distracts and diminishes from the arguments being made. Mitt Romney seems to be positioning himself as the leader of the Republican resistance, and that led to some scolding today by Trump and by Romney's niece, the head of the Republican National Committee. The new senator from Utah penned a powerful editorial critical of Trump, arguing that the president shapes the character of the nation and that Trump's character falls short in his inability to unite and inspire Americans. In response, Ronna Romney McDaniel tweeted that, quote, for an incoming Republican freshman senator to attack Trump as their first act feeds into what the Democrats and media want and is disappointing and unproductive. Trump tweeted, quote, I won big and he didn't. He should be happy for all Republicans. Be a team player and win. As usual, the media is focusing on the personality conflicts, skirting some of the more substantive points Romney makes, especially his call for America to exert leadership in world politics. The new senator points out that in a 2016 poll, quote, 84% of people in Germany, Britain, France, Canada, and Sweden believed the American president would do the right thing in world affairs. 1 year later, that number has fallen to 16%. He is right to say that the world needs American leadership and that it is in America's interest to provide it. Anyone who hoped the extreme stock market volatility we saw in December would calm down had their hopes dashed in the first trading day of 2019. U.S. stocks plunged at the open by more than 1%, in part because of news that China's economy is weakening. But the tech, financial, and oil sectors led a rebound, and all major U.S. indexes ended up the day up slightly. That good news may not last long. After markets closed, Apple lowered its sales target for the first quarter, blaming a steep drop in iPhone sales and other devices in China. These days, if China sneezes, the whole world catches a cold. In our alternate universes segment, The Great Divide Between Conservative and Liberal Media, in a new book, the former editor of the New York Times, Jill Abramson, rips her old paper, writing that even though her successor stated publicly that he didn't want the Times to be the, quote, opposition party, that his, quote, news pages were unmistakably anti-Trump and that some headlines contained raw opinion, as did some of the stories that were labeled as news analysis. She argues that the same is true of the Washington Post. Abramson points out that there is an economic motivation. Negative Trump stories drove traffic to the Times website and inflated subscriptions. Turning news pages into opinion, of course, is happening on the right as well. Fox News admitted it when it announced that its website would increasingly reflect its primetime opinion programming's heavily pro-Trump stance, as opposed to being straight news. Often, Fox headlines on the website, on its news stories, are heavily editorial and take a much more pro-Trump slant than the actual stories themselves. What amazes me these days is that still many of my colleagues refuse to acknowledge the bias that is evident to any reasonable observer. We have all those stories and much more updated around the clock 7 days a week on newsandnews.com, where you will find all you need to know in one place. Please subscribe to our video by clicking on the right of your screen just below the video. And please follow us on Facebook at Real News and News, and follow me on Twitter at AMoraTV. I'll see you again tomorrow.